You know about Loki. He was raised as a prince of Asgard, the younger brother of Thor, and the adopted son of Odin and Frigga. But there was one tiny little family secret nobody bothered to tell him. He wasn't actually Asgardian. Loki, he was born on Jotunheim, not Asgard, as the son of Laufey, the king of the frost giants. After a war between Asgard and Jotunheim, Odin found him, abandoned as a baby, took him in, magically changed his appearance, and raised him alongside Thor as his own son. Which sounds noble on paper until you remember that Loki grew up having absolutely no idea who he really was, and that secret shaped basically everything for him. Thor was the golden child, loud, fearless, powerful, beloved, sexy, and clearly being prepared for the throne. Loki, meanwhile, was always the clever one in the background. And also sexy. He learned magic from Frigga, became a master of illusions, and leaned into his role as the god of mischief. But underneath all the tricks and sarcasm, there was always this ugly feeling that no matter what he did, he would never be seen the same way Thor was. So when Thor was about to be crowned king, Loki, he set a plan in motion because, the mischief and the god of mischief. He let frost giants into Asgard to interrupt Thor's ceremony, then manipulated Thor into attacking Jotunheim, knowing Odin would punish him for it. And yeah, it worked! Thor got stripped of his power, banished to Earth, while Loki stayed behind and discovered the truth about his own heritage. And Loki, he handled that revelation, terribly. Feeling betrayed by Odin, ashamed of being a frost giant, and desperate to prove he was still worthy, Loki briefly took power in Asgard. He even tried to destroy Jotunheim, not because he cared about Asgard's safety, but because he wanted Odin to finally look at him and see him as a real son. Thor eventually did stop him and Loki fell into the abyss, but he didn't die. Instead, he ended up crossing paths with Thanos, who gave him a powerful scepter and sent him to Earth to steal the Tesseract. Loki arrived with a full villain glow-up, mind-controlled people, opened a portal over New York, and tried to rule humanity as its new king. Unfortunately for him, Earth already had the Avengers. They fought back, they stopped the invasion, and Loki got completely humbled, especially by Hulk. If you remember 2012, the chokehold that scene had on people, good lord. Anyway, after that, Loki was captured, and in the original timeline, he would have been taken back to Asgard to face punishment. But the Loki series doesn't follow that version of him. Do I say rewind time? Do I say it? I guess so. I don't know. I'm gonna say it. Rewind time! It follows Loki from 2012, right after the Battle of New York. During the Avengers' time travel chaos, or time heist if you will, the Tesseract, it lands right in front of him. Ooh, sparkly. And Loki, he does exactly what Loki would do. He grabs it and yeets on out of there. Yes, I just said yeet. And for about 5 seconds, it looks like he did just pull off the perfect getaway. But that's exactly where Loki the series begins. Episode 1, Glorious Purpose. One blue flash later, he lands in the Gobi Desert, where he immediately starts giving his glorious purpose speech to people who absolutely do not understand a word that he's saying. Classic Loki! But before he can enjoy his dramatic entrance, soldiers from the Time Variance Authority, or TVA, arrive and arrest him for crimes against the sacred timeline. Loki, he tries to threaten them, but one smack later and he's moving in slow motion and fully under their control. Not exactly his finest escape plan, and oh boy is he about to get humiliated. Inside the TVA, Loki, he's stripped, processed, forced to sign everything he's ever said, and introduced to a cartoon clock named Miss Minutes, who explains that the Timekeepers, they created one sacred timeline after a multiversal war, and anyone who steps off that path becomes a variant. And Loki, he's now one of them. At trial, Loki argues that the Avengers caused this by time traveling first, but the TVA says that was supposed to happen. Loki escaping wasn't. But before he can reset, Agent Mobius steps in and takes him aside. Mobius, he shows Loki moments from his future, including Frigga's death and his own death at Thanos' hands. I don't want to know how I die. And Loki escapes briefly, finds Infinity Stones being used as paperweights, and realizes the TVA might be the real power in the universe. Finally, Mobius reveals why he needs them. The dangerous variant they're hunting, it's another Loki. And in 1858 Oklahoma, that variant burns a TVA team alive. So yeah, Loki's new problem is Loki. Episode 2, The Variant. In episode 2, the TVA brings Loki along on their mission. Loki is technically there to help, but he's also very interested in whether helping gets him closer to the Timekeepers. Subtle as ever. Now, the first mission, it goes badly when Loki stalls, talks in circles, and tries to make the team doubt each other. Mobius sees through most of it, but Loki does eventually make himself useful after studying the files. He realizes the variant is hiding in apocalypses, because if everyone is already about to die, nothing he does creates a branch in the timeline. And honestly, it's annoyingly clever, but also very on character for him. And so to prove this theory, Loki and Mobius test the theory in Pompeii, then use a candy called Kablooey to narrow the variant's location to Roxcart, Alabama in 2050, right there. A massive hurricane, it's gonna wipe the place out. Now, at Roxcart, Loki finally meets the variant, who reveals they've been possessing people, stalling for time and setting up a much bigger plan. Loki offers to help overthrow the Timekeepers, but this variant isn't interested in ruling the TVA. Then, the stolen reset charges activate across the timeline, creating branches everywhere. And just to make things worse, Loki follows the variant through a portal, leaving Mobius behind. So yeah, Loki may be helping the TVA, but he's still Loki, and from there, the chase takes Loki somewhere even worse than TVA paperwork, an actual apocalypse. Episode 3, Lamentis. Now, episode 3, this one picks up right after Loki follows the variant through the portal. After a quick fight inside the TVA, the two escape together, but not exactly to paradise. They land on Lamentis 1, a doomed moon that is about to be crushed by a planet. Great travel planning, honestly. The variant reveals that she doesn't go by Loki anymore. Her name is Sylvie, and she's hot, because all Lokis are sexy, and she has spent her life running from the TVA. The problem is their tempad, it's out of power, so unless they find a huge energy source, they're stuck waiting for the moon to explode. So, that's not ideal. But they find out there's an evacuation arc with enough power to recharge the tempad, so they disguise themselves and sneak onto a train. And for a while, the episode turns into a chaotic buddy trip, with Loki and Sylvie arguing about plans, trust, magic, and their lives. Loki opens up about Frigga, while Sylvie reveals she taught herself enchantment. Then Loki gets drunk, starts singing, blows their cover, and gets them both thrown off the train. Even worse, the tempad breaks. So yes, Loki may be a god, but he is also very much a clown. In a charming way, of course. But with no escape left, they decide to hijack the Ark before it gets destroyed. Along the way, Sylvie drops a huge truth. TVA workers weren't created by the Timekeepers. They're variants, just like Loki and Sylvie. Major news, if I do say so myself. I kind of needed to sit with that one for a second, but they had no time for that. So they fight their way through the collapsing city, but before they can reach the Ark, it gets destroyed. The thing they were chasing, the whole episode blows up. So now they're stranded at the end of the world with no tempad, no escape, and one very awkward trust exercise. And while Loki and Sylvie are stuck, waiting for the apocalypse, the TVA finds the one thing strong enough to expose them, a nexus event that they were never ever supposed to create. Episode 4, the Nexus Event. So kids, episode 4 opens by showing Sylvie as a child on Asgard and playing with her toys before the TVA storms in and arrests her. They're arresting kids, what? Ravonna is the one who brings her in, but young Sylvie escapes before she can be reset, which explains why she's spent her entire life running from these time cops. Some multiversal childhood trauma that honestly might top some of the shenanigans the X-Men get into. But back on Lamentis, Loki and Sylvie, they're about to die. But the connection between them creates a massive nexus spike, allowing the TVA to find and capture them. Loki gets thrown into a memory prison where Lady Sif shows up, repeatedly beating him for cutting her hair, which is funny once and then just very painful. Going on over and over again, eventually Loki admits he's scared of being alone. So I guess we can call that progress, technically. Mobius then interrogates Loki, who warns him that the TVA is lying. At first, Mobius thinks Loki's just manipulating him again, especially after realizing Loki and Sylvie may have feelings for each other. Ooh, 2 Lokis falling for each other and breaking reality? Yeah, that's a lot, even for this show. But doubt, it spreads fast. Sylvie shows Hunter B-15 her real memories, proving TVA agents were stolen from the timeline. Mobius secretly checks Ravonna's tempad and discovers Hunter C-20 said the same thing before being silenced. So when Mobius finally believes Loki and helps him, Ravonna has him pruned. Poor guy didn't even get his jet ski yet. Loki and Sylvie are then brought before the Timekeepers. But with B-15's help, they fight back. Sylvie cuts off one of the Timekeepers' head and discovers they're fake androids. So the big space lizards were basically props. That's great. Before Loki can tell Sylvie something important though, Ravonna prunes him too. But after the credits, Loki wakes up somewhere else, surrounded by other Loki variants, so he's not dead yet. But he might wish he was. And after Loki gets pruned by Ravonna Renslayer, who has such a cool last name, he doesn't die. Instead, he wakes up in the one place where failed realities, broken timelines, and apparently way too many Lokis go to rot. Episode 5, Journey into Mystery. So, episode 5, guys, this one drops Loki into the void, a wasteland at the end of time where the TVA dumps everything it prunes. And waiting for him there are more Loki variants. Kid Loki, boastful Loki, classic Loki, and yes, an alligator Loki. Because at this point, why not? They explained that the giant cloud monster in the sky is called Goliath, a living tempest that eats everything the TVA sends there. Basically, the void is a shark tank, and Goliath is the shark. So it's a fun vacation spot for villains. Meanwhile, Sylvie forces Ravonna to explain what pruning really does. And when she learns the truth, she then prunes herself so she can reach the void and find Loki. It's a bold plan, but like terrible on the safety rating scale, but they don't do that around here. Back in the Loki bunker though, classic Loki reveals he survived Thanos by casting a perfect illusion, then hid alone for years until loneliness made him step back into the universe. And the TVA caught him the second he tried. So apparently, Lokis are allowed to survive, but they're not allowed to grow. As if this story couldn't get any more tragic than it already was. Things fall apart though when more Lokis show up. They betray each other and start fighting for power because of course they do, that's what Lokis do. But our Loki finally gets sick of seeing every bad version of himself and decides the TVA has to be stopped. Eventually, Loki reunites with Sylvie and Mobius, who survived too. Sylvie believes Goliath is guarding whoever created the TVA, so she plans to enchant it. Loki helps her, while classic Loki creates a massive illusion of Asgard to distract the monster. What an absolute legend! And in doing so, classic Loki sacrifices himself. Loki and Sylvie enchant Goliath together, and the storm clears, revealing a mysterious castle beyond the void. And with the monster gone, Loki and Sylvie finally reach the place where all the TVA's lies began. Episode 6, For All Time, Always. Citadel at the End of Time. This is where Miss Minutes welcomes them and offers them a deal from the man behind everything. Return to the timeline, win the Battle of New York, kill Thanos, take Asgard, and live the lives they always wanted. While that sounds tempting, no one missed just how suspicious it all was. They refuse and finally meet He Who Remains, the real creator of the TVA. And after all the fake space lizards, he's just a strange, casual guy in an office. Not exactly what you expect from the architect of all time, but it's Marvel, okay, let's see what happens. He explains that long ago, variants of himself discovered the multiverse. At first, they shared knowledge peacefully, but eventually, some versions wanted conquest, triggering a multiversal war. He ended it by weaponizing Goliath, isolating one timeline, and creating the TVA to prevent more branches. So yes, the TVA was built on lies, but according to him, those lies stopped infinite versions of him, destroying reality. Then he gives Loki and Sylvie two options: kill him and unleash multiversal war, or take over the TVA themselves. Loki actually believes he might be telling the truth, but Sylvie only sees another manipulator standing between her and revenge. They fight and Loki tries to stop her, insisting he doesn't want a throne, he just wants her to be okay. But Sylvie kisses him, sends him away, and kills He Who Remains. The sacred timeline begins branching uncontrollably. Loki rushes back to the TVA to warn Mobius, but Mobius doesn't recognize him. And when Loki looks up, the Timekeeper's statues are gone, replaced by a statue of He Who Remains. So, the multiverse is free now, which is great until all the worst versions of him are already on their way. Now we move into Season 2, and I've got to ask you guys, are you doing good? You comfy? You enjoying yourself so far? I hope you are, and thank you. But let's continue to Season 2 because it keeps getting crazier, and we're starting with Episode 1, Ouroboros. Season 2 kicks off right where we left off, with Loki running through the TVA and trying to warn Mobius and B-15 about He Who Remains. Small problem though, they don't know who he is. Turns out Loki isn't in a different TVA, he's slipping through time inside the same one, jumping between the past and present like the universe hit shuffle. Back in the present, Mobius remembers him again, and Loki explains that He Who Remains built the TVA and that his variants are coming. Meanwhile, the TVA is in chaos because everyone now knows their lives were stolen from the timeline. You know, normal workplace drama. Mobius takes Loki to meet Ouroboros, or OB, the TVA's engineer who has somehow been keeping this entire place running alone. That's usually how it goes at workplaces. OB realizes Loki is time-slipping, which should be impossible in the TVA, but impossible is kind of this show's favorite word. And the fix for this? It's insane. Mobius has to walk towards the temporal loom in a giant suit before the radiation peels his skin off, while Loki has to prune himself at the exact right moment. Great plan, very chill. So Loki slips into the future, sees Sylvie at the TVA, and gets pruned by someone off-screen. This yanks him back just in time, saving him and Mobius. But while they do survive, Dox's hunters are already going after Sylvie, and in a branched timeline in 1982, Sylvie waltzes into a Mickey D's and she asks to try everything. And honestly, after killing the man at the end of time, she has earned some McNuggets. And while Sylvie tries to build a normal life, Loki and Mobius chase the next lead, a missing TVA hunter who has gone full Hollywood. Episode 2, Breaking Brad. Episode 2, this one sends Loki and Mobius to 1977 London, where Hunter X5 has abandoned the TVA and reinvented himself as movie star Brad Wolfe. He's at the premiere of his horror movie Zaniac, soaking up fame like he wasn't just a cosmic hall monitor last week. Loki and Mobius chase him down, and Brad quickly proves he is very punchable. Once they drag him back to the TVA, he refuses to say where Sylvie is, so Loki and Mobius try interrogation. At first, Brad pushes Loki's buttons, but then he goes after Mobius, asking why he doesn't want to know what life the TVA stole from him. And for once, Mobius actually snaps. After that, Loki checks on him over key lime pie, delicious, because apparently emotional breakdowns at the TVA, they come with dessert. Mobius insists he's fine though, but yeah, he is absolutely not fine. Eventually, Casey helps them realize Brad's tempad wasn't blocking the TVA's tracking system. It was actually hiding Dox's operation. Loki then leans into his old villain energy and scares Brad badly enough to make him talk. There he is. We missed that guy. He knows how to get stuff done. The trail, however, leads them to Sylvie, who's working at McDonald's in Broxton, Oklahoma. Shout out to Broxton people watching this video, and very much she does not want to be dragged back into TVA problems. But Dox isn't hunting Sylvie. No. She's moved on, and not in a good way. Yeah, she's resorted to straight up bombing the branched timelines, killing billions. They stop what they can, but it's too late for countless branches. Sylvie returns home, furious, while Casey finds a hit on Ravonna Renslayer's tempad. So now the next question is simple. Where did Ravonna run off to? And that answer takes everyone back to the past, where the TVA's future may have been planted long before anyone realized. Episode 3. 1893. Episode 3 takes us to the 1800s, where Ravonna Renslayer and Miss Minutes appear on the sacred timeline to deliver a TVA guidebook to a young Victor Timely, a variant of He Who Remains. So yeah, the plan is basically give a future manual to a past genius and hope nothing weird happens. It's brilliant, isn't it? Years later, Loki and Mobius, they track Ravonna's tempad to the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, where Victor is now presenting an early version of the temporal loom. Mobius is distracted by fair snacks, Loki is distracted by a statue of Balder the Brave, and Victor is busy selling inventions that may or may not actually work. Ravonna, though, she wants Victor for who he remains' plan. But Loki and Mobius, they need him too, because his temporal aura can open the loom's locked blast doors back at the TVA. Then Sylvie shows up, because of course she does, she's still a Loki, and tries to kill him before he can become another Kang-level nightmare. Loki argues, though, that Victor isn't he who remains yet, and that without him, the TVA and every branch could collapse. Sylvie, she doesn't love that answer, but she hesitates long enough for Ravonna and Miss Minutes to escape with Victor. At Victor's lab, Miss Minutes reveals that she's very attached to him, like uncomfortably attached. It's weird, guys. She wants a real body. She says she loves him, and then she gets shut down. Awkward, it doesn't even begin to cover it. In the end, Sylvie spares Victor, sends Ravonna to the Citadel at the end of time, and lets Loki and Mobius take Victor back to the TVA. But Miss Minutes has one last secret for Ravonna, and apparently it's gonna make her really, really angry. And after Victor timely arrives at the TEA, the plan is simple. Use his temporal aura, fix the loom, save the branches, and hope nothing explodes. And so, naturally, everything explodes, and we're only halfway through the season, y'all. Episode 4. Heart of the TVA. Episode 4 opens with Ravonna and Miss Minutes revealing the truth. Ravonna wasn't your average TVA judge, no. She was actually the one who helped He Who Remains win the multiversal war. And then he had her memory wiped like everyone else. This man is not a great boss. Like, you don't wipe the memory of those loyal to you, bro. Like, what? Back at the TVA, Victor timely sees the temporal loom and Obi explains the plan. They need to attach a thought-put multiplier to expand the loom's capacity before all the new branches overload it. The science is mostly just people yelling words like temporal radiation, but sure, let's go with it. We all get the gist of it. Meanwhile, Sylvie, she's not thrilled that everyone wants pie while reality is collapsing. And honestly, it's fair. Mobius tries to keep things light, but Sylvie reminds him that whole timelines are getting erased. And maybe read the room before dessert, buddy. Things get darker, however, when Ravonna and Miss Minutes trap Dox and her loyalists. Brad? He's forced to choose, and Ravonna crushes the others inside the shrinking box, proving she is very much done playing middle management. Loki and Sylvie then corner Brad, and Loki even prunes his past self, telling Sylvie, I promise you, this will make sense. Which is helpful because at this point, we need that promise too, because sir, none of it is making sense here, Loki. Finally though, Victor suits up and walks towards the loom, and for one hopeful second, it looks like the plan might work. Then the temporal loom radiation instantly shreds him. The loom fails, the blast hits, and everything goes white. And when the TVA disappears, Loki doesn't just lose the mission. That would be an expected outcome. Nah. He loses all of the people he was trying so hard to save. Episode 5. Science Fiction. Episode 5 begins with the loom exploding, with Loki time-slipping into branched timelines where everyone from the TVA has been returned to their original lives. Casey is Frank, an escaped prisoner. B-15 is a doctor. Obi is a failed sci-fi writer named A.D. Doug. And Mobius, he's Don, a jet ski salesman. Of course he is! At first, Loki thinks he has to gather everyone back together to save the TVA, but nobody remembers him, nor does anyone understand what the hell he's talking about. And it makes sense. If a random man appeared and said your real job was outside of time, he'd probably call security too. Loki eventually finds Sylvie, who remembers everything, but she doesn't want to help. She thinks everyone deserves to stay in the lives that they were given. But then reality starts unraveling. Her McDonald's meal disappears. Timelines begin collapsing. And suddenly, this isn't just squiggly lines on a TVA monitor anymore. These are real lives being erased. As Loki keeps slipping, Sylvie realizes something has to be done. One by one, Loki gathers the group, but the timeline starts spaghettifying around them, tearing his friends apart before his eyes. That's when Loki finally understands the real problem. It's not about where, not about when or even why. It's about who. He learns to control his time slipping and jumps back to before everything falls apart. So now Loki, he's got one more chance to fix the loom, to save his friends, and maybe, finally become more than the guy who loses. And this time, Loki isn't just running through time. He's rewriting the entire story. Episode 6. Glorious Purpose. The finale brings everything full circle, with Loki time-slipping back to the moment before Victor timely dies. He tries again, and again, and again. Every attempt fails, so Loki, he spends centuries learning everything Obi and Victor knew about the loom. Casual study session, just a few hundred years. Eventually, they finally succeed in launching the Thought-Put Multiplier. For a second, the loom stabilizes, then it overloads again, because infinite branches cannot be scaled. Turns out math, it's still undefeated, y'all, running strong. Loki then goes further back, confronting He Who Remains before Sylvie kills him. And that's when the real trap is revealed. The loom was never meant to save every branch. It was a failsafe designed to destroy everything except the sacred timeline. So, no matter what Loki does, the system ends in control or collapse. Loki considers the horrible option: stop Sylvie from killing He Who Remains, but Sylvie asks the real question: does he really want to be the god who takes away everyone's free will? And Mobius's story reminds him that every burden comes with a choice. So Loki makes his final choice. He walks into the temporal radiation, destroys the loom, and gathers the dying branches himself. His horns rise, his magic turns the timelines into a living tree, and Loki finally gets the throne he always wanted, just not the way he wanted it. In the end, Mobius leaves the TVA to watch the life he never got to live. Sylvie gets her freedom, and Loki sits alone at the center of time, holding every story together. And guys, that was Loki. The story of a villain who wanted a throne, lost everything, and became the one god strong enough to carry the entire multiverse. And honestly, it couldn't be anyone else.